Hello and welcome back to Bookish Brits. My name is Michelle, and for today's video I really wanted to tier rank all of the series that I've read, and for this I chose a series that I've read during my book blogging career. I've been book blogging at Fluttering Butterflies since 2006. Okie doke, so here we are. Here are the different series that I've read, and here are the rankings that I've chosen. God tier, great tier, good tier, okay tier, and trash tier. Anyway, let's get started. The first one I'm going to talk about, A Court of Thorns and Roses. I've read the first two books in this series, but I haven't read the third. I enjoy it. There's something really addictive about the way Sarah J. Maas writes, but for me it's just good. If I enjoyed it more, I think I would have read the third book by now. A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Camarera. This is pretty similar in that it's a fantasy retelling of Beauty and the Beast as well, and I'm gonna go with good. Actually, I really loved the first one, and I enjoyed the other one, so maybe I'll stick it in great. Next, we have Alice in Zombieland by Gina Showalter. This was something that I read years and years ago, in which Alice in Wonderland, it's kind of contemporary, and then it's set with like zombies, and they kill zombies. It was okay. Birthmarked, I don't really remember much about it, but I think I did finish the trilogy. All I really remember about it is that it's a dystopian and the main character is a midwife. It was okay. Blood Red Road is the first in a trilogy called the Dustlands trilogy by Maura Young. I'm going to stick that in great. I really enjoyed that trilogy, really enjoyed the characters and the relationship and the whole setting. Bloodlines by Michelle Reed, that's the spin-off series to Vampire Academy. Didn't really like it. It was okay, and that was pretty much it. I much preferred Rose and Dimitri to Sydney and Adrian. The Body Finder is a series of books, I want to say, by Kimberly Jerding. It was a series I read a long time ago. No idea why there's flowers on the covers of those books. It's about a girl who is, I don't know, like attracted to dead bodies. That sounds really bad. I mean that she can sense dead bodies, not that there's any sort of attraction. It was enjoyable, but a little bit forgettable, so we're going to put that in good. By Midnight by Mia James. This is a book, the first book in I think the Ravenwood trilogy. I probably didn't get that right, but it's set in about vampires, and it was just okay. There was something about it that kept me reading, but not enough to make me remember it 10 years later. City of Bones. I read the first 3 books in the series, and then I kind of gave up from there. I wasn't really that interested. So I'm gonna say that it's and don't hate me. We're gonna put that in okay. It was okay, pretty much. Whereas Clockwork Angel in the Infernal Devices series, we're gonna put under great. I loved those books. I love the whole dynamic between, and I can't remember the main character's name, and Will and Jem, but mostly Jem. I love Jem. Okay, so the next one is Confessions of an Angry Girl by Louise Rosette. This is a contemporary trilogy, and it's about a girl who has anger issues, and I think her brother asks his best friend to look out for her, and he's kind of a bad boy, and there's this whole like she's crushing on him and they kind of get together, but are they really together sort of thing. I really loved it, so I'm going to put that under great. Dead Time, that's the first in the Murder Notebooks series by Anne Cassidy. It's about a girl who teams up with her like ex-stepbrother to figure out what happened to their parents who both disappeared. There is kind of a love story between her and her stepbrother, and if you're okay with that sort of thing, I mean, it worked in the story. I'm going to put it under good. I really enjoyed it at the time, and if I was making this list at the time of reading those books, I probably would have put it under great, but with time, yeah, it's good. Okay, so we've got Dead Until Dark. That's the first book in the Sookie Stackhouse series about vampires, and I read the whole series. I did, but they are trash. There's no other way to put that. They're trash. They're enjoyable trash, but they're trash. I remember buying quite a few of the books in the series at a charity shop, and they had like this display table with like 4 books on there, all for like 50p or something ridiculous. And I took them all, and the lady who was working at the charity shop was like, "Oh, thank God, they're gone." Next up we have Deep Blue by Jennifer Donnelly. This is a book about mermaids. And I think there's 3 or 4 books in the series, and it's mermaids from all different parts of the ocean who team together, and it was good. Like, I'm not a huge fan of mermaids, but there's something about the way Jennifer Donnelly writes that it was really enjoyable. Next up we have Delirium by Lauren Oliver. This was a big dystopian back in the day. I probably really enjoyed it when I read it all those years ago, but now looking back on it, I think, especially with the state of the world that we live in now, I think I want my dystopians to be a little bit more believable. How could love ever be outlawed? I don't know. It's not trash so much, but it was just okay. Die For Me by Amy Plum. What I really liked about this series was that it was set in Paris, and I really liked Paris. It's about revenants, people who, I don't know, sacrifice themselves and then get reborn. It was a whole thing. I'm gonna stick it in trash because I don't have a very good recollection of the books themselves. Divergent, that was an enjoyable series at the start, and then it kind of went downhill, so I'm going to stick it under good. I liked the first one, maybe even like the second one. By the third one, I was thinking, what? Because there were things added in there that didn't really make any sense, and I just didn't like where it all went. So next up, Fallen by Lauren Kate. This one is about fallen angels and this mortal girl in this, I don't know, fancy boarding school, and it was trash. I'm gonna stick it right here in trash. Not much you can say about it. It just wasn't good. I think that at the time it was all about like bad boys treating girls badly, and that was like this whole romantic thing. But I look back on it now and I just think, yeah, no. 50 Shades of Grey. Very sadly, I did read all 3 of them, and by the third one it was kind of like hate reading it. I was just thinking, well, how bad can this get? So we're gonna put that in trash. Yeah, just there's not much more to say about that. Next up we've got Finding Sky by Joss Sterling. This is the first book in her Benedict series. The Benedicts have something like 7 brothers, and this is all about finding their soulmates, and it was interesting. I'm gonna stick it under good. I really enjoyed all of the books that I read. They were a bit samey, but they were samey in a way that I enjoyed. So, The Forest of Hands and Teeth by Carrie Ryan. This was a trilogy about zombies. The first one was really good. The second one, I think, was very different from the first, and then I can't even remember the third one or if I finished it, so I'm going to stick that in okay. It didn't make very much of an impression on me. Geek Girl by Holly Smale. Really enjoyed that book. I liked the sort of geeky adorableness of the main character, so I'll stick it under great. I feel like I've been pretty harsh in this video so far. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. There's no other place really for Harry Potter except here under the God tier. I know J.K. Rowling is a bit problematic. There are things that I don't like about the Harry Potter stories or universe. I really don't like that there's no gay, bisexual, trans characters, and we're just supposed to believe that, oh yeah, but Dumbledore is gay, even though it's not written into the text itself. I don't like it. And then there's everything about J.K. Rowling herself and things that she said and done recently that don't make me feel very comfortable anymore. But I have all of those memories about reading the books for the first time, sharing the books with my children, going to events, being part of a community. I remember reading a Harry Potter book on the bus, I think I was, and it just sort of, as soon as I pulled my Harry Potter book out, it sparked conversation. I just feel like Harry Potter brings people together, so that's, I mean, I don't need to justify why I put Harry Potter in the God tier, but there you go. Hunger Games, I know everyone's rereading this series lately in time for the prequel, and everyone's really excited. I love the Hunger Games as well. We're going to put it over here in the great tier. Hush Hush by Becca Fitzpatrick. I didn't really like Hush Hush, the first book in the series. Again, this is about fallen angels, and Patch, I believe the main character is a bit of a dick. I don't know why I read the other two books in the trilogy, but I'm ashamed to admit that I did actually finish this trilogy, and they were trash. Trash, that's it. Moving on, Immortal Beloved by Kate Tiernan. This is a trilogy about immortals. I think the basis of the story is that they're reborn and, well, I don't actually remember. I remember really liking it, but I don't remember a lot of details about it, so we're going to stick that in good. The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness, the first book in the Chaos Walking trilogy, and I'm going to stick that in the God tier. Absolutely love that trilogy, and I remember reading the third book of Monsters and Men, and everything was happening, and it was just so exciting. I had to put the book down and stop reading and calm down a bit because my heart was beating so fast that I thought I was going to cause myself an injury if I carried on reading. Absolutely loved it. So, God tier it is. Next up we have Marked. This is the first book in a vampire series by PC and Kristen Cast. I read maybe 4 of the books before I gave up because they were so bad. So very, very bad. Bad. Hated every second of it. But they were such a beloved series at the time that I kept reading thinking, what am I missing? And I wasn't missing anything. They were just that bad. Next up we have Matched by Ali Condi, and if I remember correctly, this is a book where the government, I believe, sets you up with who you should be with romantically, and I think I enjoyed them at the time, but we're gonna just go with okay. It probably would have rated higher, except there were no same-sex relationships in this book, and it was just okay. It didn't make any sense. I don't really remember much about it, so that's where that goes. Moving on, we've got My Soul to Take. This is the first book in the Soul Screamers series by Rachel Vincent, and this is one about banshees, I think they're called. Banshees. I'm probably not getting that right. But she lets out a scream and then things happen. The thing that I remember the most about this is that there was this really great relationship at the start, and then the main character actually falls in love with the brother, and that was so much better than the original relation. I remember the relationship much more than I remember the actual storyline, but I remember really loving it. I was quite addicted to them, and it's more about the feeling that I get when I'm reading these books than anything else. This, in the same way that I rate my books on Goodreads or whatever, I rate those based on how I felt when I read it, how emotionally invested was I in the story and the characters and the relationship, and it's the same with these tier, I don't know, rankings. The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is about a series. This is a series about some gifted teenagers who have these, like, they're not supernatural abilities. Like, the main character just knows how to profile really well based on the experiences that she's had growing up. Another character is really good at maths and probability and that type of thing. They're just all like really nerdy people, and I really loved this series. It was so good. I imported a lot of the books in because it was quicker than waiting for them to be published here. I think maybe only the first two were published here anyway. They're so good. If you haven't read them, do read them. I really enjoy them. Next up we have Night School by CJ Doherty. This is about like a secret school, and I can't quite remember. There's all these secrets about it, and there's this, like, night school is a special part of school to help train. I don't remember. I remember enjoying it, so I'm going to stick it in to great, but it's not one that I remember much more about, except that it was really good. Mallory Blackman's Knots and Crosses. I'm going to stick that in the God tier just because they're really important books. They were really influential to my younger self, and it was such a like fangirly moment when I met Mallory Blackman at a book event. She's amazing, and I love that there is the BBC series, and hopefully it connected with a bigger, wider audience. I don't know, they're really good. Next up we have Perfect Chemistry by Simone Alcalese. These were books that were really popular when I started really getting into the book blogging, and it all seemed to be white girls falling in love with Latino boys, and they'd say really gross things like Mamacita, and it was all a bit cringe, and I really I don't have a good lasting memory, so there they go in the trash tier. Princess Diaries by Meg Cabot, on the other hand, are some of my absolute favorites. They're going to go right up here to the God tier. Fight me on that one if you want. I adore Meg Cabot. I adore Mia Thermopolis. Love. Okay, next up we have Pushing the Limits by Katie McGarry. This is the first in a series, I guess, of like interconnected characters and how they all find love. I really enjoyed them at the time. When they first came out, I was really excited. And then looking back on them, it kind of feels like they've taken some difficult experiences and kind of romanticize them. Each of the main characters are like their quirk or whatever is that they have like crippling anxiety or something, or like an abusive childhood home. So they're not quite trash, but it can't be anything more than just okay either. So what are you gonna do? Raised by Wolves by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the same author as The Naturals, and what I really liked about both series, both The Naturals and Raised by Wolves, is that Jennifer Lynn Barnes really takes her psychology background and really infuses her characters and her storylines with psychology. So I'm going to stick this into Great. So if you're not aware of this series, it's about a girl raised by a pack of werewolves and figuring out how she belongs within this pack, being a girl, which just means that she is physically weaker than everyone else, but she's like a born leader, if I remember correctly. Rebel in the Sands is the first in a trilogy by Alwyn Hamilton. I really, really love this book and the whole trilogy. Everything about it. I remember giving the first two books 4 stars, and then by the time that got to the trilogy, the trilogy ending, and I gave it 5 stars. And I just remember sitting in my bed crying my eyes out at how it had ended in this like really great way. So I'm going to stick that into Great. Next up, and honestly, I'm so surprised by this whole list. I can't believe that I have 59 series to talk about with you today. Holy crap. And I think what this is really showing is how much I regret reading quite a few. All the time that I spent reading all of these like okay books, these trash books. I'm so ashamed of myself. We've got the selection by Kira Cass, and I think they just announced that there's a show maybe coming out soon, and you know what? I will watch them. I probably will, but we're gonna stick that where that belongs. Be gentle with me, guys. Here, I'm only being honest. Oh, Shiver by Maggie Stiefvater. This is the first in her Wolves trilogy, Wolves of Mercy. I don't know what it's called. Really enjoyable, but I don't have much of a recollection of them. They didn't make a huge impression on me. I know that she is an author that everyone really loves, but I'm going to stick that in good because they were good. I don't regret the time I spent with those books in the good section, but they weren't my favorites. There was something about them that didn't move it up to the next tier. Next up we have Silent Saturday by Helen Grant. This was a trilogy called, I think, The Forbidden Spaces. What I really liked about this trilogy is that it was set in the Flemish speaking part of Belgium, I want to say, and it follows at least the first one anyway, an Easter tradition. I could be getting this all wrong, that I'd never heard of, and it just felt like something new and different. It is a contemporary story. The main character has some issues with her parents and this whole romantic relationship that's kind of off and on. I'm going to stick it in good, but it's kind of in between good and great for that one. Siren by Trisha Rayburn is a book about mermaids, and I did really enjoy this series. Mermaids aren't really my thing, but I really liked how this one went. There were some interesting points raised about the main character's mermaidness and the sort of sacrifices that people who are not part of her family or not afflicted with this whole mermaid gene have to deal with in order to be part of her life. That was an interesting concept to me. Next up we have Starcrossed by Josephine Angelini, and I have some memories of this book, and I think it's maybe set on an island, and all of the characters are like the personification of gods, Greek gods, Roman gods. I'm not entirely sure, and it was okay. It's pretty much what I'm telling you. There was a lot of melodrama, and yeah, there was a lot of drama with that one, which made it something that made me keep wanting to read, but not really enough for me to remember them years later. Next up we have Strange Angels by Lily St. Crow. This is about our main character who battles demons, I believe. And what was really surprising about this series is that it's really gritty and dark. There's a lot of violence and death and blood and gore, but I think at the time I was reading a lot more fluffier, romantic stories, a lot of paranormal romances at the time, and this book was good in that it's, I don't know, it was something a little bit different. I'm going to stick it over here in good, but again, it's another one of those ones that kind of borders between good and great, because there was just something really addictive in reading that story. Next up we have The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. This is a trilogy that I think came out before To All the Boys I Loved Before, and it's about this girl who summers every year with another family, and she kind of falls in love with both the brothers of the other family, and I loved it. I still have thoughts about who she should end up with, and even now I just think I think back sometimes on this trilogy and think, why did you do that? Why? So yes, really enjoyable. The Testing, that's the first book in a trilogy by Joelle Charbonneau, and that is a dystopian trilogy where people who take part have to sit through tests of some sort. I'm going to stick that in there with okay, because it was okay, but I don't remember it well enough to say much more than that. Next up we have The Boyfriend List by E. Lockhart, and who doesn't love Ruby Oliver? I absolutely adore Ruby Oliver, and just E. Lockhart in general. Like, I don't really enjoy many of her thrillers, and some of the books that she's lost all my words there. I haven't enjoyed everything she's written, but I've enjoyed a lot of the things that she's written. Next up we have The Iron King by Julie Kagawa. I enjoyed it. It kind of went on a bit too long, so it's only going to be good for me. But it was an enjoyable series. Fae creatures are not something that I'm hugely sold on, and I never have been. But I think that Julie Kagawa just writes in a way that makes me give them fairies a chance in a way that I wouldn't have normally done before. Next up, we have The Winner's Curse by Mary Rutkowski, and what a surprise that book is, that she was. Absolutely loved it. Definitely in the great section. Really, really good. Tygris Curse by Colleen Houck. I think the thing, like my impressions of this book, is that the covers were all amazing. They were really striking. There's this interesting relationship structure between the main character and two different characters that kind of got dragged out a little bit. The main character herself is a bit wet and boring, and I couldn't really see what the appeal was for her. And also looking back on it, I feel like the author may have cherry-picked some of the Indian and Chinese stories and just kind of taken them, and I think an own voices author could have handled that with a little bit more sensitivity. So for that reason, it's going to go in the okay tier. I've already talked a little bit about To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. That's going to go in the great section. I loved the trilogy. I loved Laura Jean. I loved her family. I loved Peter. I even loved characters that, you know, were vying for Laura Jean's attention. Yeah, it was just really well done, and I really, really enjoyed myself reading those books. Next up, we have Trial by Fire by Josephine Angelini. This is about witches, and it's set in another universe. So it was really good, and I'm gonna stick it in. I'm gonna stick it in great. It probably doesn't deserve a great title. There's so much dramatics going on there, but it was dramatics in a way that I was really sold on. So yeah, just really, really, really good. Under the Never Sky by Veronica Rossi. I don't remember much about this book. The main character was born in this like protective bubble, and there are people who live outside in this like wasteland, and she, I don't know, meets one and she thinks of him as like a savage, and then there's this whole love story. I think that I enjoyed it more when I read it at the time, but now it's just an okay memory for me. We're really rushing through this. I don't know how long this video is going to be, but hopefully you stay with me for this. Next up, we have Unraveling by Elizabeth Norris. This is a duology about, it kind of starts off with a girl who dies in a car accident, and then a student that she knows barely brings her back to life, and then there's this whole mystery. Loved both books in the duology, so I'm going to stick that into great. Next up, we have Vampire Academy by Rochelle Mead. This is the original vampire series, and I already talked about Bloodlines, which is the spin-off series. This one's about Rose and Dimitri, and I think I started reading this one kind of hoping that I was going to hate it and I could just move on, but I was so addicted to it, I couldn't get enough of it, so I'm going to stick that into great. And I'm going to stick Vendetta by Catherine Doyle there as well. Vendetta is the first in a trilogy about a girl who realizes that her family are mixed up with the mafia, and chaos ensues pretty much, but I loved everything about it. Wake by Lisa McMahon was a trilogy that I read ages ago, and This was a trilogy about a girl who jumps into other people's dreams, which can make her quality of life to be not so great. It was a little bit dark in places, but also very enjoyable at the same time. Yeah. Last two guys, When I Was Joe by Karen David. This is the first in I think a 4-book series. I'm going to stick it in the great section. Joe is part of the Witness Protection Program. He is the witness to a knife crime in London, and this first book in the series is all about identity and who he chooses to be, and there's elements of guilt in the series. I really loved it. It was so very good. And finally we have Withering Tights by Louise Renison. Louise Renison is a comedic genius, and that's going to go right here in the great section. So there we have it. Those are the 59 series of books that I've read and where I place them in my ranking. Would you agree with me? And absolutely feel free to disagree with my choices. I said what I said, and that's about it. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time.